Hello everybody, I'm Nora Burrows. I have a bunch of these leftover flannel scraps from a deer quilt that I made. I'll show a picture of the deer quilt at the end of this video. But I have all of these scraps. These ones are all on the relatively small side, and they are not solid. Some of it, you know, the black and the tan kind of read solid light, but this one is a herringbone, and this one has kind of a crisscross pattern. So these are all flannel. I have these little pieces that are very small, and then I also have some of these pieces, these scrap pieces that are a little bit bigger. They're more like strips, I would say, but also on the smallish side. We're not talking yardage here. So the deer quilt I made, it was all of these three, it was just 3 fabrics. And this upcoming project I want to do is also ideally only going to be these 3 fabrics. However, I'm not sure how far this will get me, and I would like this quilt to be at least, you know, a baby size quilt. And I don't have a whole, you know, you lose a lot in the seam allowance, so I'm not sure how far I will get with this. So I may need to add something, but I'm hoping not. You know, I want to iron some of these pieces, and then I want to square them off. So I'll have squares and rectangles, and then I'll try and put some of the squares and rectangles kind of randomly together. So let me do a little bit of ironing and cutting and see where we're at that point. I've cut all of those smaller pieces into the biggest size squares or rectangles that I could. My smallest pieces down here, I'm going to put these tiny ones together first. But let me go ahead and kind of pair some of these smaller ones together. Like for example, I might take these 2 right sides together, sew and fold open. I don't know how many I'm gonna do for this first round, but let me do a little sewing and then we'll see what's next. Here are a couple pieces that I put together, and what I'm gonna do next is start to pair some of these. So for example, you know, I could maybe pair these 2 like this. I think I'll do that. So I'll put right sides together, and then I put a little clip here on the side that I'm going to sew, and put this next to my sewing machine. And that way when I pick it up to sew it, I know which side I'm supposed to be sewing. And then the other thing I can do is, you know, over here I have all of my squared off pieces. And as these pieces grow, I can start pairing some of these. So for example, I could just take this one and add it to the side there. So that kind of thing. So that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna pair some of these up, add some of the strips from up there to these, and keep going. My pieces are starting to grow here, and I'm just gonna keep doing the same thing that I did before, kind of matching like sizes together and sewing them, or taking a strip of one of my singles and adding that to the side of one of these. And these will just continue to get bigger, and then as they get bigger, I can attach those pieces together. I'd like to have maybe, you know, 4 or 5 kind of separate pieces building larger and larger. My pieces are getting pretty big, and this is aesthetically exactly what I was going for. You can see kind of with this one where all the different seams were. It started with this 4 patch here, and then, you know, these 2 got added on, and you kind of just build from there. So this is pretty cool. I've used all of what I consider to be my small pieces, and then I still have kind of these bigger pieces over here, medium-sized pieces I would say, and then I have kind of those bigger strips. So I'm going to take the medium-sized pieces, keep adding on. Like I said, I'd like to keep maybe, you know, 5 of these separate, but I can start, you know, still combining some of these if I want to, and just playing around a little bit. But here's a close-up of just some of these bigger pieces here. I think I have maybe like 6 of them. This one is probably the biggest. I have far less of this kind of burnt orange fabric. I have just kind of like a little bit in terms of the small pieces, but then I have more of it as the pieces get bigger. This is another one that started with the 4 patch. Here's a little bit more of the burnt orange. And some of these pieces are pretty small. You know, this one here is teeny tiny. I think this probably started out as maybe a little bit bigger than a 1-inch square. And here's the last one here. So I'm gonna keep adding. I have a bunch of pieces here that are on the medium-ish side, I would say. And then in addition, just kind of these these random ones, but these are getting to be a nice size. I am almost completely out of the bits that I had over here to put together. That's all I have left there. But then I do have a bunch of strips. So I will start needing to use these strips next. What I'm thinking is that for some of these strips, they're already pieced together. For example, like this one here has these two pieces together. So what I would do is, let's take an example here, is I would, instead of starting, you know, at the end of the strip and attaching it like this, I'm thinking, here, let's move this so you can see it. Instead of attaching it at the end like that, I'm thinking I would attach it kind of in the middle, which would add for an extra seam, which I think looks kind of cool. So I will start kind of using some of these strips. This is probably my biggest piece here, and I am really, really excited about this. I think these are looking really great. I do believe that I have enough to make a baby quilt. I don't know that for sure. I have to keep going, but I think I do. This would be the ultimate coolest baby quilt, I think, ever. My husband is really insistent that I make this a scarf. He thinks that this would be a really cool scarf, and I think that it would too. I think it would be a cool scarf, but I'm not really feeling in the scarf making mood right now. And I think a baby quilt would be just the coolest. And then I'll put a sleeve on the back, and it could be a wall hanging depending on, you know, who ends up with it. At this point, I have kind of 6 blocks that I'm considering my main blocks, and I've laid them out on this mat that is 24 inches by 36 inches. And I think if I just keep going, I'm not too far away from starting to connect some of these pieces together. I'd like the baby quilt to be a little bit bigger than this mat. I mean, even, you know, twice the size of this mat would be great, but I don't know if I'll get that far. I'm going to continue to make these blocks a little bigger and then start connecting them together. I've begun to run out of pieces that, actually a long time ago I ran out of pieces that were not strips, and it's kind of becoming a little bit challenging in a couple ways. So what I've done is I've started to kind of create interesting pieces. So this, I sewed this piece together and this piece together, and then I'll sew them staggered. So it looks kind of random in the whole piece, hopefully, but it's not. It's intentional. So once you get to a certain point, sometimes you have to get creative about cutting things up, sewing them back together another way, that kind of thing. I want to give you a look of the blocks so far. I now have 5 because I sewed these 2 blocks together to make one big block. So that's one. Here's the second. Get a closer look. The third. Now this did have another piece attached to it that I cut off and am getting rid of. The pieces had gotten too small, and so they didn't look perfectly square. So I should have done that with all of you, but I was just on a roll and did that. So this one is actually smaller than it was before. This is block 3, and these can really go, you know, they're non-directional, so they can really go any direction. When I start putting the pieces together, it doesn't really matter. And then here's the 5th one, the last one. And I think these ones were sewn together. You can see, you know, the one long seam there. At this point, what I'm going to do is, because I want to create more of those big blocks, and as I've mentioned, I only have the strips left. So it's hard to kind of make more of these blocks with only strips. What I'm going to do is cut some of these strips down into smaller pieces so that I have kind of a lot to use from, as I did in the beginning when I first started and had all those little pieces. I'm going to make all those little pieces with this. In other words, I'm going to cheat a little bit, but I think that that's fine. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. You don't need to see that process because you already saw it, but I'll show you the new blocks that I make when I'm done with those. You can really see it coming together here. I think this down here is going to be, you know, the bottom. I might put a strip in between there to make it a little bit wider, but this is pretty much it. I need to fill in this spot here, but that'll obviously be the top. I am thinking about perhaps once this is done, putting a thin border of black around the whole thing, but I'm not sure exactly how I'm feeling about that. I do think I have enough black strips to do that, but I would have to double check. So I'm a little stuck here because I'm running out of pieces, but I'm going to try and put some things together to fill in that spot. Eventually I'll sew together this row down here, and then hopefully sew, you know, pieces to be here, pieces to be here. So this piece to whatever goes here, connect these two together, and then connect the top with the bottom. As you can see, I'm almost there. This whole big square is all connected, and then this here is connected, this piece to this piece. So I need to connect those two together. There, you can see a little better there. And then this bottom row, I'll need to put a piece kind of right in there, connect those, and then at that point, see how everything is measuring up. I may need to add a strip here or there, but this is basically done. It's very, very close. How am I feeling about it? I don't know yet. I'm feeling very undecided about if I like this or not. I don't absolutely love it. I love a lot of pieces of it. There's a lot of parts that I really like. But let me go ahead and put this together, and then when it's finished, we'll talk about it. Here is the finished top, and I'm having a drastic change in course, I think, because I do not like this. I think there's a lot of potential here, but I want to fix it. So what I'm thinking is, I think that the problem is I don't like that rust color with this. The other quilt that I made, which I will show you at the end of this video, I love, and I think that the colors worked really well together. But I think this would have been so much better if it was just the black and tan color. So what I'm thinking is, which seems a little crazy, but I think I'm going to applique over the rust color with the black and tan. So, you know, I'll just pick whichever makes sense artistically speaking. For example, you know, like this little piece here, I would probably do in tan because it's surrounded by the black. Same with these squares up here. I would do those in tan. I think a lot of these would actually be tan. This one down here I might do in black. So I don't know. I think that's what I'm gonna do. I think I'm gonna end the video here because the video was, you know, watch what I make with these scraps, and this is what I made. I would like to do an update of this at some point. So don't forget to subscribe so you know when I've completed this. But you know, Darlene Michaud, who is, you know, my favorite YouTuber, she does some quilt things, and at one point she made something she didn't like, and she said, you know, I don't love it, but I love that I tried. And that's how I feel about this. I don't love it, but I love that I tried. I actually really dislike this quite a bit, but I do think it has potential. I think it could end up being super cool. Like this one up here, I would probably do in the black. And then I'm going to bind it in the black. Hopefully I have enough. I mean, once I start appliquing, you know, some of the black, I'm going to lose some of my fabric. I'm pretty low on the black right now, but we'll see. So thank you for joining me. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye.